Okay, so get this. You know how energy costs are like always going up, and the grid. Ugh, don't even get me started. I was doing some research looking for solutions, and I found this company, Vetren Energy, and they say they found like the answer. It's called the Energy Cube, and there's a smaller version called the Energy Cube Mini. They're calling it, get this, a complete energy ecosystem, not just another battery. So today we're going to dive into their promotional material and see if it's all it's cracked up to be.
It's a bold claim, that's for sure. What I think is interesting is this idea of an energy ecosystem, because most home batteries, they just store energy, right? But Veteran's saying that the energy cube can manage power from like solar, the grid, even generators. It's like the control center for your whole house.
Yeah, exactly. And like they took the idea of, a smart home and like made it just for energy. But how does it actually work? What's the technology behind it, this so-called brain and heart of your power system?
Well, their promotional material doesn't really get into the details, but it does mention something about intelligent optimization algorithms. So maybe there's like some AI involved. Maybe it's using real-time data to decide, which energy source to use at what time. Sounds like they're trying to be smarter than those traditional solar battery systems, the ones that can have issues when it's not sunny.
So instead of just like reacting to how much energy you're using, it's actually thinking ahead. That's pretty cool. And they're really emphasizing that it's more than just a battery. They call it a power manager, a distributor, and an enhancer. What does that even mean, energy enhancement?
That's a good question. I wish they would have explained that a little more, honestly. I'm thinking they're talking about stuff like power quality and reducing energy waste. Maybe it like smooths out fluctuations from the solar or the grid, so you always have reliable power. Or maybe it does smart load management, like making sure the important stuff gets power during peak hours. It's definitely interesting.
Definitely. And speaking of interesting, they talked about how it can keep things running even when the grid is down. They say it's great for like hospitals and data centers.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Reliable backup power is becoming more and more important these days, especially with, the grid being so old and all the crazy weather we've been having. Just think about how much it costs a hospital or like a business that needs their servers and when the power goes out. And even for regular people, it's nice to know you can like keep the lights on and the fridge running if there's an outage.
Totally. So we've got the Powerhouse Energy Cube, but they've also got, and I love this, the Agile Off-Grid Warrior, the Energy Cube Mini. What's the deal with the smaller one?
I think we're going after a different market with the Mini, like smaller applications, cabins, RVs, maybe even like powering equipment on a construction site. It's all about being portable and working off grid. They even mention a school that's using it to power a cabin off in the woods.
That's really cool. Sounds like it could be a game changer for people who want to get off the grid, or for times when you just need like dependable power. And speaking of game changers, did you see that it can charge EVs? The Energy Cube and their new Mini Cube, I guess, will have it built in. You could charge your electric car with solar for free.
Now that's where it gets really interesting. I mean, it might not actually be free depending on like how much you drive and how many solar panels you have, but it's super convenient. Plus, you're not using the grid and you're helping the environment. And for businesses, especially ones with, a fleet of vehicles, it could save them a lot of money.
For sure. Okay, so we've got the big Energy Cube and the little Mini Cube. But how do they compare? Let's look at this chart they have in their material. First up, size. The Energy Cube is obviously bigger, meant for bigger houses or businesses. And the Mini Cube is, more compact, good for smaller spaces or taking with you.
Yeah, and that size difference means they have different power outputs too. The Energy Cube can hold a lot more power, and it can handle three-phase power, which is what you need for like industrial equipment and big buildings. The Mini Cube is more for, smaller setups.
Right, it's like they've got something for everyone. What about working with the grid?
Energy Cube can work with the grid or completely on its own, so it's pretty versatile. You can use the grid when you need it and switch to battery during outages or when prices are high. It looks like the Mini Cube is more for off-grid use, although it does say it can be adapted.
Okay, that makes sense. And the Energy Cube has that EV charging feature. The Mini doesn't, at least not the standard one.
Yeah, that and the backup generator support really shows you who they're targeting with each system. The Energy Cube is for, places where power outages are a big deal, and having a backup is really important. And the Mini Cube seems more focused on like providing power off grid, where you might not have access to the grid.
So that they've got something for like whatever you need. But how do they say it can save you money?
They're basically saying you'll use the grid less, especially during those peak hours when electricity is most expensive. By like managing your energy use and using solar when you can, they say you can save a lot on your electric bill.
It's like having a personal energy assistant, making sure you're like always getting the best deal. And for people who really want to be off grid, that's a big plus. Think about it. Making your own power, being free from the grid.
It's a powerful idea, and more people are interested in it. It's part of this whole movement towards, self-sufficiency and being prepared, especially with energy costs going up and the grid being so unreliable.
Yeah, for sure. But before we get too excited, let's take a step back. If this technology is really as amazing as they say it is, what could that mean?
That's a great question. Could this mean people start moving away from the big power grids and we start seeing more like local energy systems? Could it make more people switch to renewable energy? These are questions worth thinking about.
Absolutely. And what about, making sure everyone has access to clean energy? Could this help communities that haven't had reliable power before?
It's definitely possible, but just because the technology exists doesn't mean everyone will benefit. We have to think about things like cost, infrastructure, and making sure communities are involved.
Yeah, you're right. It's important to look at any new technology critically and think about how it could affect everyone, not just some people. We
Exactly.
have to
So,
think about the whole picture
yeah,
and think about like the social impact.
yeah,
It's not just about the technology itself.
right.
It's about how it's used and
Exactly.
who it
And
benefits.
who it might not.
Yeah, exactly. So we have a lot to think about here.
Definitely.
It's really interesting stuff.
It is.
I'm curious to hear what our listeners think.
Me too.
We'll have to see how this technology develops
Yeah,
and what the real world impact is.
exactly.
But it's exciting to think about the possibilities,
Yeah, it is.
and I'm glad we could dive into it together today.
Me too. It's been a great discussion.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to leave it there for now.
Okay.
But we'll pick up this conversation again soon.
Looking forward to it.
Okay. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So we've got a lot to think about. On the one hand, we have this like potentially revolutionary technology. It could like totally change how we think about energy. But on the other hand, we got to be realistic and think about like, what could go wrong and how it could affect everyone.
Yeah, and that's where you come in, our listeners. We need your help to figure out what's real and what's hype. I always tell people, do your own research. Don't just believe the marketing. See how these systems actually work in the real world.
Exactly. What are people saying who are already using the Energy Cube and the Mini? Are they actually saving money? Are they really off the grid? And what about, the technical stuff? Like how efficient are they? How long do they last? Do they hurt the environment?
Right, right. How do they compare to other energy storage options? What are the pros and cons? We need independent testing and analysis.
Yeah, for sure. And let's not forget about that whole energy enhancement thing. What does that actually mean? Does it make the power better? Does it waste less energy? I'd love to see some like actual data on that.
Yeah, it's good to be a little skeptical, but also curious. People always want to find better solutions to problems, and the Energy Cube is definitely making people talk about the future of energy.
It is. It's making me think about my own energy needs. What about you? What parts of this tech like really speak to you? Is it the backup power, the potential to save money, or maybe like knowing you're helping the environment?
For me, I think it's the control, and the independence, being able to make your own power, not relying on the grid. It's appealing. It fits in with this whole idea of self-sufficiency and being prepared, especially with climate change and everything.
Totally. And imagine if like whole communities started using this tech. Could we see a shift towards like decentralized energy? Could it speed up the switch to renewables? It's pretty exciting to think about.
It is, but technology isn't a magic solution. We have to fix the bigger problems, the ones that make it hard for some people to get affordable energy.
Yeah, you're right. It's about making sure everyone has a fair and sustainable energy future, not just the people who can afford this new technology.
Exactly.
Okay, before we wrap up, there are a couple more things I wanted to mention. First, what about the environmental impact of these systems? They talk about sustainability. But what about like making the batteries? And what happens to them when they're, done?
Yeah, that's a good point. We need to make sure that solving one problem doesn't create new ones. Are they using materials that are ethically sourced? What's their plan for recycling the batteries? Vetren needs to be transparent about all that.
And second, I'm curious about like smart home integration. Could the Energy Cube talk to other devices in your house? To use less energy? Like imagine it adjusting your thermostat or turning off lights based on like how much energy you're using.
Now that would be next level. It could make things even more efficient and maybe save you even more money. I wonder if Vetren is thinking about that.
And finally, I'm thinking about the big picture. Like how would this affect the whole energy industry if more people start using these decentralized systems? What would happen to the big utility companies?
That's a big question. Maybe we'll see more partnerships, where the utilities work with customers to manage energy. Or maybe it'll lead to disruption and competition. It's hard to say. But it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, it will. This whole conversation has really made me think about how we can all be a part of shaping the future of energy. It's not just about the technology. It's about like the choices we make and what we do and being willing to, talk about these things. What kind of energy future do you want? And what are you going to do to make it happen?
I like that. It reminds us that we're not just like along for the ride, we have a say. By staying informed, asking questions, and speaking up for the solutions we believe in, we can all help create a better energy future, one that's more sustainable, resilient, and fair for everyone.
Absolutely. So let's keep asking questions. Let's keep pushing for innovation. And let's keep working towards that brighter, more sustainable energy future. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of the energy cube. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep powering your own personal revolution. Yeah, it's good to remember that we have, the power to make a difference. And speaking of power, one thing we haven't really talked about is like disasters.
Right, yeah. Especially with all the crazy weather we've been having. Imagine if, like, a town could keep the lights on after a hurricane, even if the grid was down.
That's a pretty powerful image. It shows how these systems can make, not just individuals more resilient, but whole communities.
It's about, like, changing how we think, from depending on others to being self-sufficient, from being vulnerable to being prepared. And technology like the Energy Cube could really help with that.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm feeling, I guess, cautiously optimistic. On the one hand, I'm really excited about the energy cube and the mini cube. They could like totally change how we get and use energy. But we also need to be careful and think about the bigger picture.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. Be open to new ideas, but also be realistic and know that there could be problems.
And that's where you come in. Our listeners, we need your help to keep talking about this. Do your own research, share your thoughts on social media. And most importantly, think about how this could affect you and your community.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the future of energy isn't decided by, like, companies or politicians. It's decided by all of us, by the choices we make and the things we do, and by talking about these things.
So let's keep asking questions, let's keep pushing for better solutions, and let's keep working towards a better energy future for everyone. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Energy Cube. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep powering your own personal revolution.